I always say I want to listen to guys that played or coached. And Kirk Herbstreit, who, by the way, we're not going to give you little media wonks any ammunition this time. We're just going to talk some ball. Let's just do that. Herbie, yesterday, my wife and I, Illinois State got a big win. We're driving home in the morning, listening to your show, and you said something that is so true. It's so true about Indiana basketball. You said, and I don't know if you're being facetious, but you said, look, it would almost, you didn't say it would be, you said it would almost be better for Ohio State to have a road game because booing, Ryan Day, the whole thing. And Herbie, I swear to God, at Indiana, you could feel at home, like the crowd's great eventually, but you can feel the nervousness as a player or a coach. And when I went to the Indiana-Ohio State game, friends of mine that are season tickets at Ohio State said, look what will happen if Indiana gets off to a good start. You can feel the shoe get nervous. And it did. What you said was brilliant, and no one else can figure that out. That was brilliant.
Well, I've been there a lot, and what's been cool for me is traveling all over the country and seeing the different fan bases for 30 years. Not to mention growing up as a kid watching Ohio State. And I've always viewed Ohio State as some of the best fans in the country. But I think things changed for Ohio State fan base when Jim Tressel came in and it was no longer the Big Ten and the Pac-10 separated by the Rose Bowl in their own world. The Tressel era, they were included in, with Alabama and Miami of Florida and everybody. And when Tressel beat Miami in 2002, it became that was the goal. That was now a realistic goal. Of winning the national championship, and it should be, obviously, just like IU has a goal of making it to the Final Four every year. It should be at places like that. But I feel like they got to the end of the rope with John Cooper, and they're to that point now because of what's happened the last 4 years with Ryan Day. And my only point of that was when you go, this as a player, when you go to Neyland Stadium, you put your white uni on. And it's us against the world mentality. You're going to be booed. That people are going to be, trying to tear you apart. And you have your kind of like you're insulated mentally as you prepare to walk in to that cathedral. And it's a beautiful stadium. You come home after what just happened against Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State loses a fourth time. There's a melee after the game. All the social media stuff after the game. My only point, I talked to Joey Galloway about this after the show. My only point was, can you imagine what Ohio State will do if they go 3 and out, or God forbid, there's a sack against the best defensive line, by the way, in the country. If that quarterback, Will Howard, gets sacked and there's a scoop and score and you're down 7-0, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Will Howard, how about the poor field goal kicker who missed 2 kicks against Michigan that a lot of people think, quote unquote, cost them the game? God forbid that kid comes out and misses a field goal in a game. So my only point was there's so many great fans, but right now under this climate and these circumstances, I do think it'd be better for them to go on the road and deal with just the hostility of playing at Tennessee. But it is what it is. They're at home, and hopefully their fan base will be supportive, not only on great plays, but if they get down or if they deal with adversity. Hopefully they'll get in their corner and try to will them to a victory if it gets that way.
Yeah, I don't know that if you haven't played or coached, you understand that. I really don't, because it is there. It now, Ohio State fans, I thought in the Indiana game, once Ohio State and the sideline got pissed and started really playing, the fans were great. But I thought your point was fantastic. And by the way, I'm remiss. Congratulations to your son, Chase. I sent you that text. You know, going to Michigan, brother. Here it comes. That's awesome.
Nobody, I texted you back. Nobody knows better than you.
No.
With your and what he dealt with. You got it both ways. It's an interesting year, Dan, because the football programs, once they have this rev share and they're putting a cap on rosters. Chase was at that spot on a lot of teams. Notre Dame was talking to him, Georgia Tech, possibly. I was initially talking with, Clemson a little bit back and forth. There were some other schools that were talking to him. And Chase isn't a 5-star just walking into the building, how much you going to pay me? Chase is that guy, if it were a normal year, he's fighting for that opportunity, and a lot of these teams are waiting to see who's going to leave in the portal, who's coming back into the portal, how many guys are we going to be able to sign? We're trying to cut some guys to try to get our number down to 105. So this particular recruiting class, if you were that kind of that 3-star guy that's trying to find out where you can fit in, it was tough, and it put these coaches in tough spots. So for Sherrone Moore to just step up and say, hey, we want to give Chase an opportunity. We believe in this kid is a guy we can develop. He's going to be a program guy. He's going to be here for 5 years, buy in. Chase had to jump at the opportunity. So we're thrilled for him and what he can do. And yeah, but there'll be some bumps on the road, especially with social media, I'm sure.
I thought it was like, at first I thought it was The Onion. Like, I'm like, really? Like, going to Michigan? I thought, okay. And then I paid attention. Like, oh, is that cool? Like Kirk Herbstreit's kid goes to Michigan. Here's this Ohio State. But I think it's awesome. I'll tell you this. Look, I didn't know Michigan. You go to a game, at least what we did in basketball as a player. You go to a game, you go to a hotel, go to the gym, broadcaster, you go meet with the coaches at the gym, and go out to eat, blah, blah, blah. But when my son went there, I loved the school, man. I thought, man, the people that he's gotten to know are freaking moving up in business or sport. He knows this guy. I mean, it's a cool place. Congrats, man. I am. That's very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, but it's already started. It's all. I looked because you mentioned my son. It's already started, the stupidity of like fans. It's unbelievable.
Well, let's put it to you, and you know how to simplify it. If he were sitting there staring at Ohio State offer and a Michigan offer, Ohio State can't take everybody, and this is a scholarship. Right. It's not like they're trying to do their thing, and if they felt that Chase could have been able to be a contributor for them, then I'm sure that they would have said, "Hey, here's an offer." But Ohio State didn't present that to him at all, so you can't be mad at a kid who's. He's grown up his whole life an Ohio State fan, like a lot of kids in the state of Ohio, but Ohio State can't recruit everybody. So these kids have to look at other opportunities. And for Chase, it's in Ann Arbor, and he couldn't be more thrilled with this opportunity. And as his family, of course, we're thrilled. You start to look at, and you just said it, Michigan, the tradition that they have, the alums that they have, the business school, the connections, just as a dad, it's an incredible honor for him to get this opportunity, and we're fired up to see how things go for him in the next 4 or 5 years.
I got to get to my Indiana Hoosiers, but first I saw this Timothy Chalamet. I didn't know who this guy was, but this dude, he knew some football.
He did. I'm with you. I wasn't real familiar at all with him. I, of course, did a little research and started to see, this and that, new movie out, and very accomplished in his field. But I thought, I don't know if he's going to know football. And then Pat brings him on for the field goal kicking contest, and he just had fun with it. He kind of played along with Pat, who threw me in and said, Herbie's going to give 200,000 too. I was like, what? I said, okay, all right. Yeah, the kid misses the first attempt. It was like a pop-up on the infield, which is hard to do without a tee. And then Pat's like, okay, we'll give you another chance. Herbie's going to go 400. Timothy's going to go 400. I'm going to go 400. 1.2. And I'm like, holy cow. And Timothy's playing along with it. And the dude actually hit it pretty good. He almost made it. So when I saw him just kind of have some fun roll with that, I thought this guy's going to do a great job on making those picks. I'll tell you, that pick segment, we've had guys that, like Kenny Chesney, who's a diehard college football fan, he'll come on, or Luke Bryan will come on. Some of these guys really know their stuff. Eric Church, I mean, he's breaking down too deep. Like, he really knows his stuff. And then other guys have some fun. They'll be like, hey, you know what? I dated a girl from Chapel Hill. I'm going with North Carolina. Like, so there's a wide range of what people do. But I'm with you. This guy, he was breaking down some knowledge, and you could tell he follows football. He shocked me.
Who brings who thinks to bring him on? Like who thinks to do that?
I a lot of times the coordinating producer and others get involved. I used to be way more involved with a buddy of mine that used to work at Wheels Up, and we would try to brainstorm. But doing these Thursday night games and game day and Saturday night, I'm kind of out of
Yeah.
the loop on a lot of that. But I almost at this point I don't even know who does it.
Yeah.
If we get to a certain spot, and I think some of my buddies, maybe a Luke Bryan or Kenny or somebody like that might be a good position for them to come in. I might recommend them, but otherwise, I'm as surprised as everybody else with the names that they come up with every single week.
Herbie, my Hoosiers got Notre Dame. Look, I'm saying this, and I don't know. Everybody's got their own who should be in. I always said this when Joe Lunardi, when I was at ESPN. Hey, I get it, but they're going to tell us on Sunday night, and my fat ass is going to be watching on Thursday. And it's the same, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I say Indiana caught a break. I maybe they didn't. I don't know. But before I get to that, Georgia, Kirby Smart just boomed all over Greg Sankey with Sankey sitting right there. Was that fair of Kirby to do that?
And again, we were calling the game, and then we throw down there for that, and I heard him say it, and I thought, and Kirby's kind of a ball buster. Like I didn't know if he was just having some fun, but of course it gets into the world, and then it's gonzo. I did see Greg's face because I, like everybody else, I was like immediately to Greg, who was standing there. And, whether it's the NFL commissioner or the SEC commissioner, so often those guys step up on that dais to hand over a trophy. A lot of times, boo! I mean, they're always in that position, to get booed.
Yeah.
And then the way the social media has taken that, I don't know if Kirby was really like sticking him there. It's definitely perceived that way. I got to ask Kirby about it and ask Greg about it because I haven't talked to either one since, but I don't think there's bad blood there at all. So I think it was like a guy that was kind of poking some fun at him, maybe not realizing, how big it would become on the back end. So I'd be curious to know if Greg called him, or if he's going to call him this week and talk to him about that.
The game was over. I wasn't really paying attention, and I heard it, and I went, "Whoa, wait a second!
Oh yeah,
whoa,
yeah." It was a bigger deal on social media than it was on TV.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. Hey, I said Indiana got a break. Now Notre Dame's really good. They beaten the hell. They're actually a lot like Indiana, right? I mean, they played the schedule that they played. I get it. Army and Navy had big years, but they beat the hell out of who they needed to beat the hell out of. Indiana catch a break. I mean, I don't know about a break, but how do we at Indiana think about this matchup with the Irish?
Well, first, let me say this. I'd love to get your opinion on this. I really feel like it's very easy for all of us on the sideline to look at the committee. And the committee, to me, has almost become like the NCAA. Like the NCAA said, Merry Christmas. Oh, hey, right there, NCAA. Like no matter what they say, they're the worst organization in the world. I feel like the committee is starting to kind of fall in line. Like no matter what they do, they're a bunch of bozos. They don't watch the games. They got an agenda. Screw these guys. They have no idea. Like I mean, what do you do? I think that hopefully we've learned, these top four teams, the whole season, I was like, who's going to get the 5-hole? That's the spot you want to be. Boy, look who you potentially play. And the 5-hole's a pretty good spot. And I'm sitting there thinking, boy, Oregon makes this great run in their first year in the Big Ten. They're not necessarily rewarded for what they did when they look at the winter. You know what I'm saying? So I think, if anything, I hope the conference commissioners will be willing to say, hey, guys, we tried this the first year, the 12 team. Let's maybe tweak this, tweak that. Let's just play the conference championship games, rank our 12, or if it goes up to 16, and then let's just stack them up like March Madness, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down, because I think it creates confusion when you have a Boise that's whatever they were ranked, but they move up to 3, and we got Arizona State. The whole thing is kind of maddening. and then you get matchups that are a little bit, I think, concerning. So I'm not one of these guys that's like just going to rip the committee because it's fun to do. But I think the way the system is set up by providing a bump for the conference champs, that I hope they revisit going into next year. But as far as Indiana, I really wondered about Indiana. You and I haven't spoken yet, but when they went to Ohio State, I was calling the game somewhere else. I stayed for the first half just to watch the game. And I really was impressed with Rourke, that opening drive. First of all, he's an impressive looking guy. I don't know what I can't remember what he's listed. 6'4", 6'5". The place in Columbus is going nuts in that opening drive. He walks out there like he's been there his whole life, running the ball, converting on third down. They move right down the field. They put one up on the board. They go up 7-0. And I remember thinking in my head, forget this debate about are they a top 12 team. That's over. This team, in my head, I was thinking this team's definitely a playoff team. Well, then they have like 86 yards the rest of the game. Like Ohio State put it down on them. But I was just really impressed with them, what I watched. So I don't think they go into that game against Notre Dame and they're physically going to be outclassed. I don't think they're going to walk in and be overwhelmed by the moment or overwhelmed by the physicality or the athletic ability of Notre Dame. I really don't. I think it's just going to be a good football game. I think it's going to be who's going to win that turnover margin, which quarterback's going to be able to avoid the disaster, which team's able to kind of win the line of scrimmage. I think all those boring old coach kind of cliche comments, I think it's just going to be a good football game in a very cold weather that's going to be fun on a natural surface. I'm fired up. Of all the games in that first round, maybe it's because I'm from the Midwest. I'm really excited to see how that one goes. If Indiana loses, it won't be because, like, my point is, they shouldn't be there. It'll just be because they lost to Notre Dame. And if they win the game, so be it. They won the game and move on to the next one. I think they've earned that this year, in my mind, anyway.
Yeah, we're my wife and we're going to be in Florida, but I immediately looked for the ticket costs, and they're through the roof. And then I hit my boy Scotty Johnson, who's doing the game. I go, Scotty J, let's go. Help a brother.
Oh, yeah. Scotty's going to love that one. Hopefully we get some snow.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is this to have these home playoff games in some cold climates? It's going to be a blast just to see how that going to be a spectacle in that opening week.
Herbie, I got to get your opinion on this before I let you go. You know, I was talking to Shane Beamer after, last weekend with all this plant flagging and all that kind of stuff. And I think the easiest prediction to make was as that continued, there were going to be brawls, and then games that watched the noon game. You know how players are. Hey, we're going to do that if we win at Florida, or you know what I mean, at Florida State. I don't like it. I particularly don't like it in the Ohio State-Michigan game. I have such reverence for that game going back to when I was a kid, and it was a big 2, little 8, and I couldn't wait to watch that game, even though I didn't give a crap about either team. But I knew John Brockington and Stanley Jackson and all the guys. But how do you stop it, or should you stop it?
Well, I'm like you. I'm from your generation. I have respect for the game. I have respect for your opponent. You want to kill your opponent, especially in a rivalry game. But I just feel like you want to do it the right way. You want to do it in the right way. Between the whistle, you want to knock a guy out. But after the game, man, I watched the NHL Stanley Cup, and I'm always blown away. At the end of a 7-game series, and they've had fights, and they've been going at it, and those dudes line up and they shake each other's hands, and they got bruises and their stitches on their face, and they are honorable. They show honor to the game. They show honor to one another. I hate to sound like an older guy, but I still really like sportsmanship. I still like go at it, as like the Army-Navy game this weekend. They will go at it between the whistles. And I love that that don't just be like pat them on the head. Oh, Army, Navy. No, no, no. These dudes are trying to annihilate each other. But after the game, they stand there in attention for both sides and honor each other with their alma mater. And I just I think unfortunately that we're gonna have to put police, I think, around the logo at the 50, or you can find the head coach. You know, if your team's gonna do this, we're going to give you $1 million fine for you personally, not your school, not the Big Ten. You get $1 million fine or a $500,000 fine. Watch how fast that thing will be eliminated. So I hate it. I don't think it's fun. I can see why the players react to the flag planting, especially on a rivalry weekend, but I don't like it. I think it needs to be nipped in the bud. We need to come up with ways to try to police it better. And I think I'm still a guy that beat the shit out of each other if you want to during the game, but go over and shake each other's hand and wish them well after the game. I still think we need to have that in sports.
Yeah, my son, I was having breakfast with him yesterday, and he said, Dad, I'm surprised that, I said what I said, which was Michigan should be above that, and Ohio State players, I didn't blame them. He gave me that thing, well, they should have played harder on the field. I said, wait a second here. Those dudes played their ass off on the field. Stop. They got the shit beat out of them. And what about this, Herbie? I think it was maybe it was Tom Luganbill, maybe it was Josh Pate said something like, "What? Well, these players are making a lot of money.
Fine.
What if you find the players?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what if?
Yeah,
you
I mean, I think that's a little bit of we're still in that reactionary mode. I think if you can proactively try to find ways to threaten the head coaches, listen, next, like they did with this whole targeting years ago, they had me put a tape together to try to send it to coaches and say, hey, it's on you guys. If this thing's ever going to change, you're going to have to teach different style of tackling. It's on you. And I think it's the same thing with this. It has to be on the coaches. These kids grow up. You know this from basketball. When you go to the all-star camps, well, football is really taken after basketball. You have 7-on-7 camps, just to have a life of their own. The guys that are a lot of guys that are teaching this and coaching this, they promote that stuff. When you go to the All-American stuff out in Beaverton, Oregon, you go one-on-one. You should see the way these guys, they don't just go one-on-one. If a guy makes a catch on a DB, he's throwing the ball at him, he's yelling at him, he's talking trash. Same thing if a DB stops a receiver, he's like all up in his face. And the guys that are running these camps, they're laughing, they're celebrating. So these kids are kind of coming up in these grassroots programs in middle school and high school where this is encouraged and it's celebrated. And I think they're losing the respect for the opponent. They're losing the respect for the game. They don't necessarily look at it the way you and I, the history of it and the way we just loved it every year. I don't think it's the same culture today, the same climate. So the coaches have to proactively teach this and try to avoid it in the future. And then if you still have it, then I like what you're saying. Then you can ding these players, fine these players, suspend these players for the playoff. Don't let them go play in that next game. If you're going to suspend a player for a targeting call in the second half of a game and he's going to sit out the next game in the first half, do the same thing to these guys in the post-game celebrations. I think you got video to look at them, ding them not only financially, ding them on the field that next first half as well.
I proudly, Herbie, wear the mantle of old man because I am, you and me, we're the only culture in the world that doesn't listen to people that have been there. We're the only culture in the world that dismisses guys like you or me that have been there and watch this and have a little bit of sense over the course of 30, 40, whatever many years. So screw anybody that wants to say it's two guys. No.
Hey,
young
man,
guys, shut the fuck up and listen.
I'm so glad you brought that. So glad you brought that up because I have 4 sons that are all 24 and younger. I've come up with them calling games and living in this. The last thing, and you with your sons, I mean, I'm not disconnected, but I feel like you, I have some thoughts that I want to try to maintain some things. My entire career, I never played it down in the NFL. my entire career, I feel like I'm indebted to people like Lee Corso, who I listened to and watched and asked questions to and learned from. I'm talking about the TV side and just sat next to him. And I could never be Lee Corso, but out of respect, I was raised, my dad was a coach at Ohio, Miami of Ohio and Ohio State with Woody and Bo. And so I just always looked at coaches as people that had experience and wisdom that I could learn from. They've been there and done that. So I've always looked at people and watched, even you or like somebody on TV that I admire. I learned from them. And I'm not trying to like be a hammer on the younger generation, but man, just look at me. I never played in the NFL, and I've made a pretty good living by listening and watching and observing and appreciating people that have come before me. And just it doesn't mean we're the angry old man yelling at the clouds. It's just we're trying to offer up things that we learned through trial and error, made a ton of mistakes, and just trying to offer some insight to try to help out. Do it or don't, but this is what I found pretty helpful. And people that have been in my life that have done that for me, man, I like bow down to them. And I'm so grateful because it changed my life for the better. And I want that for the younger generation. And I feel like sometimes they're not interested. And I think that's based on my life. That would be a mistake not to listen to coaches and other people that are trying to help, more than anything.
Herbie, I had one of the greatest experiences of my life yesterday. We were having breakfast. My son, myself, my wife, and we're talking about coaching. And my son got out his phone. I said, "Put your phone down. What are you doing?" He goes, "Dad, I'm taking notes." I go, "Really?" I go, "Really?" Wait, I had to touch him and go, "Are you really my son?" Because we were talking about different things and coaching,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, it was. And my wife, we got in the car and she goes, "That's like the coolest thing I ever saw." I go, "Yeah, somebody paid attention." I've kept you way too long, man. I hope we didn't. I hope we don't cause you any problems with this appearance. It's great. It's great.
Yeah. Hey,
what game are you calling?
I'm calling Ohio State and Tennessee, the first round in Columbus. We're actually doing a preview show. We'll do a college game day in South Bend on Friday night and do halftime there. And I'll go to Columbus, call that game. And then the next game, I think I'm doing the Rose Bowl, I believe, which I think is Oregon versus the winner of the Ohio State-Tennessee game. So this is going to be fun, man. This will be fun. And if you guys ever want to have me on during the stretch run here in the postseason, just hit me up. Let me know.
You're awesome, man. Appreciate you. Can't thank you enough for your time, man. Thanks, Herbie.
Course,
have
man.
a great time. Love to your family. You know what I'm talking about.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.